if you ever done one or ever wanted to do one, it's quite painful. All right, and we're live on YouTube, so my goodness, we're live everywhere. Let's make sure I'm not lying about the schedule here. Yep, 11:45. That's Zach Berman is coming up next, but right now we have Steve Mersell, and we're gonna, Steve Mersell is the lead and owner of Cloud Jungle, and he's also an expert on Einstein analytics. He presented at the last X-Force webinar, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation on the superhero top 10. So with that, take it away, Steve.
Hi, right. Well, thank you, Leonard, and a big thank you to the X20 team as well for inviting me back. So yeah, always pleased to be here. Yeah, as we said, this presentation is on Einstein Analytics, and actually the presentation is fully in Einstein Analytics as well. So we're going to be taking you through a dashboard going forward, but just thought we'd start off with this quote from Albert Einstein himself. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. And this resonated with me when looking through some of the data sets that we're going to present to you now. So anyway, so brace your eyes because we've got some colourful slides coming up. But yeah, so just as a quick introduction to me, as I'm not a data scientist, I'm not a coder, I'm not really techie, believe it or not, and I'm definitely not interested in the superhero thing. I was past some superhero data sets, and somebody said, "See what you can do with this," and I really didn't know anything about it, and didn't understand that there was these magazines called, I think it's one called DC Comics and another Marvel Superheroes or something like that. Knew absolutely nothing about it. So really I'm completely unqualified to do this, but I think the idea is that with Einstein Analytics, you don't need to be a data scientist, you don't need to be a coder, and you actually don't necessarily need to understand your subject matter, although it might help a little bit sometimes. But the idea is you can get in and look at the data and try and make some sense of it. So this presentation really is all about what I call point and click Einstein Analytics. So there's no special coding in here. It's all drag and drop sort of interfaces. And the reason for all of the crazy colors is we're going to try and demonstrate some of the features that you can actually do on a dashboard, or to bring in things like hyperlinks and actually some charts and graphs, etc. as well, and how you can format it the way you want. So we just got a little bit crazy with the formatting. So hopefully you've joined us and you're ready to enter our contest as well. And the contest is about creating your own superhero. And you can do that using the QR code up the top, and it's going to put up a Google form. But if you haven't got your browser enabled on your phone, or you just want to use your standard computer browser, go to bit.ly/xforcehero, and that will bring up a form where you can create your superhero. By all means, open that up now, or there's plenty of time to fill that form out if you want to see a little bit more of the background info behind it all. So what we're trying to do is demonstrate how we can make structured, unstructured data. We've got these couple of disparate data sets, and we basically pulled them together. And then with that, we're also looking at all this data to see if we can model it and produce predictions. So effectively, what we're going to do is we're going to take things like superhero eye color, hair color, etc., and see if that has an influence on the total power score of the superhero. Okay, and we can perhaps talk about some examples of how you might not do superhero contests, but apply this into the real life workplace as well. So yeah, at the bottom of the screen, we've got our what I've called a feature bar. So those sort of familiar with Einstein Analytics, these are on here. These are the things that we've used on each page to demonstrate the capabilities of Einstein Analytics. So things like page hyperlinks, you saw us go from the opening page to this page. We've got text widgets, which is just plain text. And we've obviously got our lovely styling, put things in containers so we can move them around the page, etc. So I'm now going to use a page hyperlink here, data sets, to put us onto the next page. And in here we can see some lenses, some grades. And so what we've got here, going back to the story about the superheroes, is these are our two different data sets. I got given several data sets, and some of them were like total garbage. And these two here, there was at least some fairly decent correlation between superhero name. And one was very much metrics around superhero durability, combat scores, strength scores, etc. Almost like top trumps for superheroes. And you ended up with a total superhero score. And another one had some more sort of physical features like the height and the weight, eye color, the type of hair, if they have hair, sex, so male, female, or other, and what breed, were they human, other, mutant, I think we've got as options. And the alignment is whether a goodie or a baddie, and the publisher is which comic they first featured in. Apparently, I've been told that some of these superheroes have appeared in more than one comic. Anyway, so again, looking at what we've got in terms of features on this page, here we've got our lens exploration. So this is basically Einstein Analytics looking at some data sets, and we've just formatted the charts here. And you can see, for example, eye color, we've used some conditional formatting to relate the colors used to the wording. So so our challenge really is to see if we can merge these two data sets and make some sense out of it. So what we do then in analytics next of all is we do some data prep, and there are some various ways we can prepare our data analytics. We have things called data flows, and for this I used a recipe where we pulled some data in together. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now is open up the recipe. So I've got a hyperlink up here. So this is opening up live the recipe in Einstein Analytics, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what went on in the background. So I used like an augment or lookup facility to basically pull together two different data sets. The lookup key was superhero name, effectively, and then I found quite a good correlation between the superheroes in both data sets. I think on one of the data sets I had about 37,000 superheroes, which was incredible. And then I'll just X that, go back to our data prep. And then once we pull them together, obviously you match things like, obviously match on superhero, but I can then have one data set where I've got those metrics, so speed, combat score, power, etc., along with things like hair color and eye color, etc., etc. And then I can look at each individual parameter here, like eye color, for example. I can use a bucket feature, so you can see I've got all these buckets down here. And so for eye color, for example, I would have grouped the popular ones together, so blue to blue. So this is like a formula field or formula column. So I've bucketed the blues together, and then on one data set we have blue with a capital B and one with a lowercase b, etc. So obviously that is just blue, and all of the strange colors we just grouped as other. Okay, so I've managed to bring my data down to sort of group together those small values. Okay, and we did that with the publisher as well. So it was DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and there was a few other ones, but they were pretty insignificant. So we grouped them as other. So now you'd probably be aware that when you especially if the data analysts out there, you get given data and you get like a date column and it says next Thursday in there, which is not used to anybody. So it's an important aspect of any work in data science is effectively cleaning your data to start with. Make sure you've got something of quality that you can then go and analyze. So that's the data recipe piece, and then from there, what we do is we put it in Einstein Analytics into a model. Okay, so don't forget, if you haven't made up your superhero yet, then you can do. But what we want to do with this model, as I said before, is to see if there's a correlation between our selected variables, so your height and your weight, your eye color, etc. And these are things that you can adjust on the form, and total power score. Okay, so do you think hair color is going to influence total power score? Well, this is what we can do with Einstein Analytics is look for some patterns and some in the data that probably as humans we wouldn't actually pick out necessarily, but they could actually have a good influence on our desired outcome. So that might be, for example, if you're a retailer, you know, where you place your product, for example, top shelf, middle shelf, lower shelf, or end of aisle. So in different products grouped next to other products, etc. You've got all these little variables, and you might have a lot of data on that, but you can put it into a model to see where you're going to have the most influence, and that might be total sales, for example. Or choosing what product lines to do in what season, all sorts of different variables that you may choose to analyze. Or it could be something like engineering, for example, where you're looking at you know, variables in terms of how you set up an engine, in terms of the overall efficiency of that engine, or speed, or your outcome may be fuel efficiency or something like that. So there's lots of ways to use this tool. So really, you've basically got to decide what are your variables, and then what is your outcome variable. And for us, our outcome variable is the total power score there. Okay, so what we then do is we take all this data and we plug it into Einstein Discovery. I'm not going to go through the whole creating the discovery story on this session. I did it on a previous one, on a previous seminar I did on the X4 Summit. But what we can do is we can actually flip to our story and see what's happened. So basically what Einstein Analytics has done, it's crunched up all that data and looked for patterns. Okay, and so we started off to see what is behind the data, so what has happened. And for those of you that have done the form already and picked a high intelligence score, well, good on you, because that was the number one variable that had the biggest influence on total score. So if you picked an intelligent superhero, then great. So here, just to explain this, we've got the bars. So this is the ranges of scores that you might have chosen. So analytics sort of groups these together by default. And blue is where there's a significant change from the norm, and the grey where there is no significant change. So basically we're looking at our data sets and working at the average score of all the superheroes. And we're saying that if you've chosen an intelligence score of 1 to 14, that is significantly different from the average. Unfortunately, if you did that, you're going to get a worse total outcome score. And everything else was, you know, generally the outcomes variables, your total score will increase with your intelligence typically, but there are some other variations. So if you've gone for the 76 to 88 range and your breed is other, then that was actually one of the main factors to influence a really good score. So what analytics does, so here it's looked at intelligence, it orders it in order of the most significant combinations of variables that you have selected. So here we can see breed is in human, intelligence is in that 76 to 88 range, and also the 64 to 75 range. It does worse. So if you actually pick that range for your intelligence and you got breed is human, that's actually a negative factor. So even though overall intelligence is a good thing, if you're human and you're in that sort of medium high sector, and it'd be a bad thing. So et cetera, there's lots of ways you can analyze this data in terms of what has happened in the data. But then we can move over to why things have happened, okay? We've looked at intelligence, but let's just scroll down and look at something else here, what we got going out random. So height, 199 to 975, so quite tall superheroes has a very good outcome on the score. So we can see our average score here, was 225, our average superhero score, and just by selecting the height of 199 to 975, it adds 31 to the score. Okay, in fact here, if you did that 199 to 975, yeah, and you selected Marvel Comics, then that would deduct 4 points from your score. Okay, in fact, what we'll do now, yeah, we'll go to what could happen. no, we'll keep on what happened, and we're not going to do a compare. What's the difference? So, for example, you might want to think about what the difference is between blondes and brunettes. So we've got hair blonde and hair brown, okay, and to see which one is better. So here we've got the average when the hair is blonde, okay. However, if you're blonde and blue eyes, that's a bad thing, etc., etc. And then we can see where you're blonde and publisher is Marvel Comics. That is a good thing, for example. So the combinations of the two then add up to the difference between when your hair is blonde and hair is brown. And generally, the brown-haired superheroes do better than the blondes. But then we can perhaps add something in like sex. So let's stick that in there as well. And what that has done is it's the same chart as we saw before, but now we can just split out to say, actually, when the sex is male, yeah, we can see that the brown-haired factor is even stronger. And we'll be pleased to know, the brunette, sorry, the blondes do better than the brunettes if they're female. Okay, so and then we have the whole sexes other category as well, where there's doesn't seem to be a lot of variation going on there, but there are some minor combinations of variations. So you can actually really get into the detail of all these different variables. So does this model that we've actually deployed, is it any good? So we can actually go and look at the success of our data model here, and I'm going to go to the evaluation here. And so what this shows is we've taken our data, and Einstein Analytics pretends it doesn't know the total power score, but just looks at the variables that we've selected, and runs a prediction on that data set itself, and then compares it with the actual power scores. And you can see that there's a really, really good, strong correlation of predicted outcome against actual. Yeah, in fact, there's quite a few dots like bang on the line, and then we've got a few that are slightly off. And for those of you that are into your statistics, you'll know things like R-squared values and all these sorts of things and different folds of data, and you can really examine the actual detailed statistics behind it all. But really, we can just see from the previous chart there is a really good correlation, a prediction correlation. So we can see those factors that do influence total power scores other than those just power metrics themselves. Okay. Right, let's fire on to our dashboard. Brilliant. So we can see plenty of you on here are actually doing some scores, which is great. So what happened is you filled out a Google form, and then we used the Xplenty integration technique to integrate Xplenty with Salesforce. And what that did was it created a Salesforce record in the background. In fact, I'm just going to edit this chart very quickly because I just realized we're missing some vital information, which is creator. So we can see actually who the actual people are. Move that up there. So there we go, a bit of development in real time. Leonard. This has got to be a fix, right? So Leonard has chosen Captain Zombie America, and so far he is ahead in our leaderboard at 506 as a score. So I must say he's not actually seen this presentation before. So well done, Leonard, followed by Anonymous and Nick Hills. So we'll refresh this in a minute to see if there's any change. So what we've got here on this dashboard, just again demonstrating some features of Einstein Analytics, is we've got our all-time top 10. So these are from the big data set of 600 odd superheroes. These are our top 10, and you can do things like put a heat map on there, and then a bar to show you the average. So obviously they're all above average since they're the top 10. And then on the right, these are the ones that have been created today. And so what we used here to do this, obviously we mentioned the integration that we've got to create these records. And normally, so what we then have to do with this goes into Salesforce, but then we need to get that data into analytics. And you can do that with various replication processes in Einstein Analytics, but we use a new feature called Salesforce Direct. So we've actually got a live link between Einstein Analytics and Salesforce. So which means as this data comes in, as you fill out your Google Forms, we can see the scores come live in real time. So I'm just going to refresh the, in fact, what I should do first of all is quickly save that. We made a change to the dashboard, and let's give it a refresh to see if there's any change in the overall board. Oh, bear with me. Let's go on back to the start. I think like a live demo, and that didn't save properly because we had the error. But Captain, yeah, Len is still at the top of the leaderboard there. So. Well done, Leonard. So, so that's it in summary. So, give you a quick whiz of some of the key features of Einstein Analytics in terms of how you can basically look at your data, prepare your data for the analytics using either data flows or recipes. Also, the new data prep tool, which is just coming out, I believe, which makes life a little bit easier to prepare your data. Then you can model it, so you can then ask Einstein Discovery to go and model your data, where you have to pick an outcome and then provide it with a list of variables. It can then give you some information behind your data, and then you can get some predictions. So these predictions are written straight into Salesforce from Einstein Analytics, so we can see Leonard's predicted score for Captain Zombie of America. Yeah, and display everything in a live dashboard to explore further. So I think that pretty much sums it up, and open up to any questions.
Thanks, Steve. We do have first off, I did not see this presentation before it was given. All right, so apparently I'm just good at picking superheroes, though I think you're probably the only person on earth who knows less about superheroes than I do, honestly. But we have a question. Anonymous attendee said they think the predictive analytics are super cool. How would Einstein Analytics compare with Tableau?
Very good question. So I'm not a Tableau expert, and I think it is interesting how Salesforce are positioning Tableau and Einstein Analytics, because most of you probably know that Salesforce have bought Tableau and it's in their portfolio. So Einstein Analytics, they say use Einstein if you are a Salesforce user currently. So let's say you're a sales guy and you're used to using Salesforce natively, then use analytics. I think they've still got some integration work to do with Tableau and Salesforce. So it's kind of embedded in there, and a lot of the great applications and a lot of the clouds that Salesforce are now deploying have a analytics component built in. So they're pre-built dashboards, for example, and reports, which are great. They're saying that if you are not typically a Salesforce user, but you want to look at some analytics and data prep, then go down the Tableau route. So it's, yeah, I guess the features are the fact that, especially with the Salesforce Direct side of things, it's going to weigh towards Einstein Analytics. I think traditionally, some people believe that some of the data and the graphs, the way things are presented in Tableau, potentially may be superior in the past, but I think analytics have caught up. So it's a tough one, really. But I guess we just go with the sort of Salesforce line. So if you're a standard consumer of Salesforce, then you should definitely stick with analytics. And I also think probably look at the capabilities in your organization as well. So if you've got people that are skilled on one or the other, that's going to certainly help. the other key difference, I suppose, is that Einstein Analytics is 100% cloud, whereas you can have an on-premise version of Tableau as well. So I'm sorry if it's not a great answer, but
I thought it was pretty good. I've used Tableau.
Two differences.
I've used Tableau quite a bit, and what I would say one of the differences, you don't have any of the predictive analytics at all. What you just demonstrated, none of that in Tableau. I mean, you can do some of that. This is something, if you're if you're not comfortable with statistics, this will go and give you a whole bunch of insights into the data. Tableau doesn't do that. You have to find them yourself, basically, is what I would characterize as a difference. I had a couple of questions to ask, and by the way, anybody in the audience has a question, just throw it in the Q&A. When you started the demo, you talked about the data that you were matching two data sets, and you did a lookup on a superhero name. I think we've all seen this use case before, where someone has some external data that they want to match into data that's already in some database or in Salesforce or whatever. What kind of fuzzy capabilities or special matching capabilities does Einstein Analytics have, if any, to help with the inevitable issue of some of the keys aren't matching up if your data isn't perfect?
Yeah, so it depends what you're trying to do. So that data that we just saw there was a pretty straightforward hit with a key in terms of bringing in on superhero names. So that was quite straightforward. But things like that bucketing functionality was great. And then in the data flow editor, you've got some more advanced features, shall we say. So you can create your own fills. I think we saw before, I created the eye color fill based on, if it was brown with a lowercase b or brown with an uppercase b, we're going to call it brown. In data flow, you've got some more advanced features, and one of the tough ones that we see is around sort of date formatting as well, and there's sort of ways of splitting out single lines into multiple rows. So especially if you've got a row with lots of date values in there, but you want to use those date values independently of each other. So I don't know, let's say you've got something like an actual date, a forecast date, or a baseline date, or so you've got lots of target dates with slightly different descriptions, but you want to be able to see those sort of side by side, but they're on the same line. Then you can do things like you can split those out. So it's all different ways of splitting rows of data or joining rows of data together. Various lookup filters, outer joins, inner joins, in terms of how you augment your data together. So you do have a lot of options, and when you get stuck, you just go to the community and you sort of pose the question, and generally somebody's already asked it and come up with a really good solution. And I think that's one of the powers of Einstein Analytics, is the analytics community is really strong and really helpful. There's a huge passion around the platform out there. So hopefully that answers that question.
Cool. Can you tell us a little more about Salesforce Direct and what you know about it?
Yeah, so it's got so basically it's a live link between analytics and Salesforce. So literally, as you were filling out those forms there, then it was bringing the data in straight into analytics. And then you may say, well, why don't you do that for every record? Well, I think you just need to select your certain objects where it's important to get that information in. And that does have some limitations. It is kind of a straight in shot for getting object data into Salesforce, and it's not going to work if you do have to do lots of transformations of that data, or if you want to bring in multiple levels of a hierarchy. So, for example, account and contact, etc., all linked together, and it is really a one object, straight in shot piece of data. So, with the replication services they got with Einstein Analytics, we typically run for our clients data syncs on an hourly basis, but then again, it depends on you've got your limit of how many data flows you can run in a 24-hour period. So it really depends on the use case there in terms of the urgency for getting that data, and some of the data may not change that much from day to day. So a sort of daily sync may be adequate, but other stuff whereby you're trying to do a presentation with audience participation and you want that data in straight away, you don't want to have to go into your data flow monitor to run that data set, to run the replication, to bring it in. So it's nice the fact you've got the option to bring some stuff in live.
And Salesforce Direct, I'm assuming, is extra cost option. It's not.
No, it's all it's a standard feature.
Oh, it's part of the base Einstein.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Things change, eh?
I'm shocked. Another question I had was, I noticed that, part of the whole predictive analytics, that whole, the stuff you showed where basically, what does eye color have to do with hair color and how does that relate to the power score? Now there's a whole bunch of powerful statistics behind that. Have you found that people sometimes who aren't looking at the underlying statistics very closely, that some of them get themselves in trouble, maybe with correlations that aren't that great or sort of synthetic correlations that aren't really there? Or is Einstein pretty good at only giving you stuff that is statistically significant?
Yeah, no, it is very good. So actually, when you build the story, it flags up if you've got too tight a correlation between your variables. So for example, I don't know, let's say height and chest size, for example, if that was one of them, then there might be like a really strong correlation, and it might skew the model too much, and it suggested that you might want to delete one of those. And especially if you're putting in lots of columns of data into the model, it would actually say that you could be better off just ignoring some of these variables and relying on the strongest ones. And then also there might be some overfitting of data whereby something is really going to skew the outcome too much, and there might be an obvious one. So I guess in our model we looked at intelligence. It was a huge factor going forwards. So we perhaps we could have run that again, but taken out intelligence, and that would have put a bit more focus on the other variables. So yeah, it is a bit of an art as well to look at it. And one thing I would say with Einstein Analytics as well, it should all make sense. If you know your business as well, it's giving you insights, and there shouldn't be too many big surprises in there, but it's kind of a reconfirmation, and it's helping you making the right decisions and being able to do that fast decision making and putting it right in front of where it's needed in that Salesforce record. So, for example, if you're looking at if anybody's done any of the trailheads, there's the super badges with Einstein Analytics are based around a telecoms company, or one of them is, and it looks at attrition rates. Is this customer likely to attrit this month? And it gives you a percentage chance. And so then you can actually have a dashboard which lists the attrition possibilities. So you can have like your top 50 customers that are likely to attrit, and you can then go and look at that and make sure that you're looking after them somehow. Or even if somebody phones up about the plan and you can see that they're an at-risk person, but they're perhaps not suggesting that they are on the phone call, you can, if you've got information in there like how old their router is, you can go, hey, how about we send you a new router? And actually you can use, I think you've got a session later on next best action, for example, whereby it can make some suggestions to help improve or in this case, actually you want to reduce the attrition possibility. Yeah, so an outcome variable can be a positive or it could be a negative. So you might want to reduce the number, or you might want to increase the number. So so that's where it comes really useful.
Great. Well, Steve, thank you very much. This was a fascinating presentation, and I really liked the whole superhero thing. And I liked that my superhero was the best, which of course.
Wow, that was uncanny. Nobody could believe that, Leonard. That was generally was not a fix. So it must have come as a real surprise to you to see yourself.
I guess that's one of my talents I didn't know about, superhero creation. Yeah. But thanks for your time. It's been great talking to you at both of the X-Force conferences. I just want to remind everyone, as Steve did, that if you're interested in Einstein Analytics, at the top of the hour, wherever you are, we have Einstein Next Best panel on Einstein Next Best Action. And that's with Sika Bide and Alora Gayadar. And they're both going to talk about the pros and cons of Next Best Action, and including some issues with deployment, about, you know, where you want to use it and what the limitations are. I think that would be a great panel if you have some Einstein interest. And coming up next, we have Zach Berman, who is our partner engagement manager at Xplenty. He's going to talk a bit about an org merge that org merge ETL use case that he did with one of our consulting partners. So I think both of those are good. I hope that you will all tune in for all the rest of the presentations. And once again, thanks, Steve, and thanks to the audience for joining.
And thanks, Xplenty, and thanks, Leonard. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.